I always thought the worst kind of betrayal came from strangers. Not from the people who used to check if you were tucked in. Not from your own mother whispering, she was always too intense, too sensitive. But when it finally came, when I realized my parents were trying to erase me, it wasn't loud, it was quiet, strategic, and it almost worked. Almost. If you're into revenge stories where the forgotten one fights back, you'll want to hear how I turned their plan inside out.
I'm Rowan Elridge, oldest daughter, rule follower. The kind of child who brought home perfect report cards but still heard, "Why don't you loosen up like Tessa?" Tessa, my younger sister, was always the sun in every room. She laughed too loud, borrowed too much money, and once crashed my car on her way to get eyelash extensions. My parents called her a free spirit. Me? I was the backup plan, the designated driver. The one who could be trusted, but never celebrated. I can count the number of birthday parties I had growing up on one hand, and still have fingers left. Every trophy I earned went into a box in the basement. Every school achievement. That's nice, honey, but don't brag. I learned early on, being dependable didn't mean being loved, so I stopped expecting anything from them. Instead, I buried myself in ambition. I clawed my way through unpaid internships, late-night MBA classes, and coffee-stained pitch decks until finally I landed a corporate strategist role at one of the top renewable energy firms in Chicago. The kind of job that changes your life. I didn't tell anyone until the contract was signed. I was afraid they'd jinx it, just like everything else. And for a while it felt like maybe this time they'd be proud. When my name showed up in a press release about new executive liaisons, my mom posted it on Facebook like she was my agent. "Our Rowan, saving the planet in heels," she wrote. Except I wasn't saving the planet for them. I was surviving it in spite of them. At first, I let them enjoy the spotlight. I let them pretend they'd always believed in me, but something in their smiles felt too rehearsed, too interested. And when my father said at dinner, "Tessa's thinking of going corporate, maybe you can show her the ropes," I should have known. This wasn't admiration. It was the setup. They weren't proud, they were circling, and soon they'd move in to take what I built, piece by piece. But not if I got there first. 2 months into my new role, things were finally starting to feel steady. I was leading 2 client accounts, sitting in on executive meetings, and for the first time in my life, people actually paused when I spoke. Then came the email. HR wellness check-in, 15 min. I thought it was about the new workload initiative, maybe a survey, maybe burnout protocols. I even brought my coffee to the meeting, but the moment I sat down, something shifted. "We received a concern," they said, "from a family member about your mental state. They claimed you've had breakdowns in the past." My heart dropped. I hadn't cried in over a year, but right then my hands shook so hard I had to set my cup down. I asked, "Who said that?" They said it was confidential, but I already knew. That night I called home. Mum answered with that voice, sweet but careful, like I was the one being irrational. "We just told them you've been under pressure," she said. "You push yourself too hard. You're not like Tessa. She bounces back quicker." We were trying to help. Help? That wasn't help. That was a professional hit disguised as parental concern. And then it hit me. Tessa. "Is she working right now?" I asked. "Too fast," Mom replied. "She's figuring things out, but she's thinking about corporate strategy. She really admires you." Of course. And then Dad chimed in from the background, annoyed. "Don't be selfish, Rowan. Your sister needs a chance." I swear, for a full 5 seconds, I couldn't breathe. They didn't just report me, they were actively trying to replace me. And here's the part that still stings. They used my own medical history, stuff I had once confided to them during one of the lowest points in my 20s, as ammo. They made me feel crazy, so they could make her look sane. If you're watching this and you've ever had a parent twist your pain into proof that you're the problem, tell me in the comments. Seriously, I want to know how many of us are out here just trying to heal from families that call it
helping. Back at work, things got worse. I was pulled from one of the biggest accounts, stopped getting looped into high-level calls. And one morning, I walked into the break room, and Tessa was there, sitting on my stool, drinking coffee with my team. She looked me up and down and said, "They said you needed a break. Don't worry, I'm here now." And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just sabotage, it was surgical removal, and I was next on the chopping block, unless I did something first. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tessa in that break room, legs crossed like a CEO, sipping from a mug she didn't earn, smirking like she'd already won. I stopped waiting for things to fix themselves. Instead, I started digging. I requested access to all internal HR logs related to my case, under employee rights. I filed a formal request for the name tied to the wellness report. They denied it, citing confidentiality. Typical. But what they didn't realise was that I knew where the real trail lived, not in HR, but at home. So I searched through old emails, family calendars, voicemails from years back. And something strange caught my eye. A saved contact in my dad's phone from 10 years ago, Kemp Energy Group. Same last name as Brian Kemp, my current boss. I ran a background check. It took all of 30 seconds to confirm it. Brian and my mum used to work together, same energy firm, same department, and then my mother was fired. The file was hard to find, but not impossible. She'd been let go for emotional instability following a public confrontation with a client, a full-on breakdown. Not long after, she disappeared from the workforce entirely, started calling herself a full-time homemaker, but it had never added up. Suddenly, everything snapped into place. This wasn't just about Tessa, this was about Mum. She had spent years burying that failure, and now she was using my career to rewrite her history. Replacing me with Tessa wasn't just favoritism, it was personal redemption. But it gets worse. I found a draft email in our shared family cloud, one of those old Gmail docs my mum used to organise everything. It was a message to Brian, half written, never sent. Tessa reminds me so much of who I was before I lost everything. If there's any way she can have a real shot at what Rowan has, I'd owe you for life. Owe him. For my job. For my life. I felt sick. And just when I thought I'd hit emotional bottom, I found one more thing, a Google Drive folder, hidden under Tessa's name. Inside, a scanned image of my old prescription bottle from years ago, a screenshot of a therapy booking confirmation from my calendar, a PDF titled Rowan Wellness Decline Timeline PDF. She had fabricated an entire mental health case against me, using my own pain, and they all knew. Dad, Mum, Brian, Tessa, they let me bleed, so Tessa could shine, let that sink in. They didn't just pick her, they weaponized me to make her look better. I sat there, hands frozen over my laptop, and whispered out loud, "You were never proud of me. You were just rehearsing your second chance." And in that moment, something in me snapped, not with rage, not even with grief, but with clarity. If they wanted war, they'd picked the wrong Elridge. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into their house demanding answers. I didn't even cry. I just opened a clean notebook, titled the first page evidence log, and started writing, because that's what you do when you've been erased. You document your way back into the story. I printed everything. Every wellness email, every cancelled meeting, every project reassignment that came without warning. I even took screenshots of Tessa's sudden access to internal files and platforms she wasn't authorised to use yet. Then I called a lawyer, a quiet woman named Janice Moore, who specialised in workplace sabotage and wrongful termination. I found her through a support forum for women who'd been professionally undermined by family. Yes, that exists, the first thing she said after hearing my story. They've built a case against you using your own history. We'll build a case against them using theirs. I didn't realise how badly I needed to hear that someone believed me, that I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't some emotional overreaction.
Janice helped me draft a formal HR complaint demanding a full internal investigation into hiring practices involving family members,
Review of all mental health-related documentation submitted without consent.
an immediate halt on any transition of duties pending legal review. But I wasn't done. Behind the scenes, I reached back out to someone who had once messaged me on LinkedIn months ago, Savion Drake, CEO of a rising clean energy firm known for recruiting top talent from rival companies. Back then, I hadn't responded. I didn't think I was ready. Now I was born ready. We met in a quiet cafe across town. I brought a folder, not with a resume, with receipts. After I told him everything, Savion leaned back, silent for a full minute. Then he said, "You didn't just survive this. You dissected it. You didn't just get sabotaged. You studied the sabotage. I don't want you on my team. I want you leading one." A week later, I signed a confidential offer to join his firm as partner, strategic operations. It wasn't just a job. It was a front-row seat to something bigger. Because what Savion didn't know, but would soon learn, was this: I had a plan. The company I worked for, the one that turned a blind eye, that listened to concerned family over facts, they were about to become his next acquisition target, and I was about to sit at the table as the one guiding the takeover. They stole my name from the door. They stole my voice from meetings. They stole my safety from my own job. Now I was stealing back control. One document at a time, one silent move at a time, and none of them saw it coming. 3 weeks after I filed the complaint, I became a ghost in my own office. My badge still worked, but no one looked at me in the hallway. My name was still on the org chart, but whispered like a liability. And Tessa? She floated through the place like a guest of honor. People called her the creative one. She told stories about growing up in a house full of high expectations. I almost laughed. One morning I found her standing outside my old office, talking to Brian. She saw me and smiled. "We're just brainstorming ideas," she said. "Feels good to be useful, you know." She was playing me in a role I had written, with lines she didn't earn. But what Tessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the final act had already been cast. The quarterly board meeting was closed door, invitation only, which meant nothing to me anymore. I showed up early, navy suit, hair clean, folder in hand. When Brian saw me enter, his face froze. "You're not on the list," he said. "I am now," I replied. I placed the folder on the conference table. No dramatic speeches, no voice raised, just paper, facts, silence. Inside, a full HR complaint detailing illegal hiring practices, digital proof of Tessa falsifying mental health records, a background link between Brian and my mother, and a printed resignation letter, conditional upon a 6-month severance payout or full public litigation. The room went dead quiet. One board member cleared her throat. Another slowly reached for the folder. Brian opened his mouth. "Rowan, let's talk outside." I didn't move. "You made room for my sister by cutting me out. Now you can make room for lawyers." He sat back down. I walked out before they could respond. And just like that, I was done being erased. That same week, Tessa was quietly let go. No party, no goodbye post, no explanation. Brian's name was suspended from internal systems pending investigation. And Savion, he texted me with just 5 words: "You flipped the damn board." But the part that truly sealed it? A cease and desist letter. Not from them to me, but from me to my parents, delivered by courier straight to their doorstep. Inside it read, "Any contact with my employers, past or future, will be considered a legal violation. Any misrepresentation of my mental health will be met with court action. I am no longer your proxy. I am no longer your shield. I am your line in the sand." Later that night, Mom left a voicemail. "You're threatening your own mother?" "No," I whispered to myself. "I'm protecting your daughter, the one you tried to erase." 3 months later, I stood in front of a 27-story glass building in downtown Chicago.
My name, Elridge Strategies, was etched in brushed silver behind the reception desk. It had started as a consulting role with Savion's firm. Then came the promotion, then the funding, and finally, my own firm. Built not from family legacy, but from the blueprint they tried to burn. I moved into a modern loft across the river, traded in my second-hand hatchback for something quieter, sleeker, and surrounded myself with a team of women, planners, analysts, creatives, each of whom had one thing in common. They had once been overlooked, stepped on, or spoken over. We called ourselves the underdogs, but we were nobody's backup plan. The old company didn't last long after the takeover. Brian's resignation was forced within 6 weeks. Tessa's LinkedIn disappeared entirely. Her title scrubbed from every digital corner like she'd never been there, but I didn't celebrate. Not then. Because there was one final chapter left, the house. The same house where my mum once told me, "You're too much for people, Rowan." The same house where I'd wait for them to show up at my school play. And they never did. The same house where Tessa's photos hung on every wall, but mine were boxed up in the basement. That house. I bought it anonymously at a foreclosure auction. Turns out, after Tessa lost her job and my parents were hit with legal bills, they defaulted on 2 mortgages. I didn't renovate it. I didn't tear it down. I turned it into a transitional housing centre for young women estranged from toxic families. We called it the Reclaim House. We left 1 bedroom untouched, mine, still had the dent in the wall from when I cried into it the day they forgot my college graduation. Above the doorway we hung a single frame. Some daughters are born to obey, others are born to rebuild. The day the local paper ran a story titled, "Estranged Daughter Turns Childhood Home into Haven for Others." They asked if I wanted to give a quote. I did. "I don't want closure, I want purpose," and I found it, where they left me. A week later, I got a letter. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. Mom's. It said, "We thought we were protecting Tessa's future. We didn't realise we were destroying yours. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope one day you'll remember the good times." I folded the letter twice, slipped it into a drawer labelled Lessons, and didn't look back. At the launch party for my firm, I stood on a rooftop surrounded by clients, reporters, and my team. These brilliant, fierce women who had once felt invisible, just like I had. When it was time to speak, I stepped up to the mic. I said, "To every person who called me too sensitive, too much, who said I was unstable, or told me to step aside so someone else could shine. Thank you. You helped me build the one thing you never saw coming, power without permission." The applause echoed across the skyline, but in my mind I could still hear their voices. "You're threatening your own mother. You don't turn your back on family. You're overreacting." No, I didn't turn my back. I closed the door, the same one they slammed shut on me years ago. And this time I held the key. If you've ever been cast aside by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up because family tried to silence your voice, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what would you write on your version of the Reclaim House sign? Hit like, hit subscribe, and remember, sometimes the ones who walk away are the ones who finally walk free.